Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland Vintage Roadshow here on the SPM Crew Podcasting Network. And this is my monthly show where, I just get an excuse with a guest to gush over one of my favorite films. And joining me is one of my fellow members of the movie club over on my YouTube channel, and one of my music pals who does album analysis on my talk show. It is Jim. Thank you so much for coming on.
Always a pleasure, Shane.
Absolutely. And we're going to be talking about the first Bond movie to pop up on my list, which obviously, spoiler alert, this is my favorite James Bond movie. It is Skyfall from 2012, which I was so excited rewatching this. Um, I figured I always start off with some broader topics and then we wrap up with something fun at the end. This was a no-brainer for this one. We're going to talk a little bit about the Bond franchise in general, but Jim, what's your experience and background with the James Bond franchise?
I think my introduction to James Bond was probably the television, like Thanksgiving. I think um, there's some TV channel that does a 24-hour James Bond marathon like every Thanksgiving.
It was November. November was Bond month on like
Bond month.
Spike TV for a
Right.
long time. And yes, that also was my entryway to James Bond for sure.
And I knew I was supposed to be into Bond like as a young man, like Bond was cool. Um, but I found a lot of the movies to be kind of boring. Um, And I think I wound up getting Doctor No from the library
Nice.
because I wanted to watch the movies chronologically. And to this day, Doctor No is probably my number two Bond film like ever. It was it was a lot of fun. It was very enjoyable. There were just so many elements, the theme music, the villain with the cat and the secret lair and um
Which has been lampooned to death because Austin Powers at this point.
yes. Yeah. The
'Cause-
beautiful women, like it's all
yeah.
there in the first movie. I went and tried to read this was around the same time I got into the Jason Bourne franchise, which I also really still enjoy. I could sit down pretty much any night of the week and watch maybe all three of them. I'm showing my age. How many are there now? There's like five
Five.
Bourne movies at this
Um,
point, but
yeah, because it's the Born Identity, Born Supremacy, Born Ultimatum, Born Legacy, and then Jason Bourne.
yes. Jason, which I may not have seen yet, actually. I don't really remember, but it was around that same time. I watched Doctor No because of the Bond thing and because I
Hmm.
really like the Jason Bourne movies. Doctor No to this day is still in my top three. But yeah, it's really interesting. I tried to read both books, the Bourne Identity and I think Casino Royale was the first
Hmm.
novel of the Bond run
Yeah.
by Ian Fleming. And the books were kind of boring after watching the movies. They're really usually I'll be somebody who is like, oh, the book's better, whatever.
Hmm.
But the movies have become like this whole other thing for both of those franchises. That I don't reading the books never really did it for me the same way watching the movies will. But Daniel Craig's my favorite Bond, I think. And I don't know. I guess we can unpack this a little bit. I don't know if it's that I was at an impressionable age
Hmm.
when Daniel Craig was introduced as Bond, or or if there's like a solid case there for anybody to make that Craig is a solid, contender for the best Bond.
So
Yeah, we can talk about that later. Go on.
yeah, because I've been watching James Bond movies since I was like seven. Um, I used to watch them with my cousins a lot. And I owned almost every single one on those old MGM VHS tapes. That collection that they had. And there was a couple of them that I hadn't seen. I didn't have Octopussy. I didn't have On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but I had almost all of them. and I grew up playing GoldenEye like a lot. Um, that was like one of the few first person shooters I was actually good at. And I think it's the whole thing where like the joystick was just your movements and your aiming at the same time. So then when they introduced like that dual joystick setup that's supposed to be more realistic gaming, I'm just like, nope, I don't know how to play this. I only know my N64. But I spent a lot of time doing that. And my impression was like Pierce Brosnan was my James Bond because I would when I was 7, GoldenEye had just recently come out a few years before that, and then Tomorrow Never Dies came out a year before that, I think. And I think the first one that came out in theaters that I was aware of was The World Is Not Enough, which I think is a really underappreciated James Bond movie. I think people just write off all three sequels to GoldenEye for Pierce Brosnan as just bad. I'm not going to defend Die Another Day here today. That one is indeed, which I think the most mature thing to acknowledge as a James Bond fan. There's two things. One, you're not supposed to like James Bond because he's a horrible person. Like, this is not somebody to idolize and stuff like that. And two, most of these movies are bad, or like a decent chunk of them are bad movies. It's just, I could watch any of them and at least get some enjoyment. It's really sad to acknowledge like most of Roger Moore's are movies, which is a shame because like The Spy Who Loved Me is definitely one of my favorites, and that's like the best of the Roger Moore era with the man who wanted to like pull humanity down into the sea, and it introduced Jaws, and who is by far my favorite henchman, like not even close. Richard Keel, love him. I used to play as Jaws in Goldeneye all the time.
Nice.
But like you have the early like Doctor No set the tone. I would argue that From Russia with Love is like the perfect blueprint of how to make a James Bond movie. And it just has it all. And like even I have more appreciated hindsight for Robert Shaw, who is the Spectre agent that he fights on the Orient Express in that movie. And then
Yeah.
the whole Spectre thing, like Blofeld was like one of the most iconic villains of all time until, Dr. Evil overtook him because Austin Powers is so great. Like, I think the most iconic James Bond movie is Goldfinger. Like, that just has some of the most iconic elements of any James Bond movie.
Mm.
Between Odd Job and Pussy Galore, who's like top tier Bond girl, especially because my God, who came up with the name for this character? Um, Speaking of God, I love Famke Jensen, model turned actress, who was Xenia Onatopp, who would literally squeeze men to death with her thighs in Goldeneye. Genius, genius character. And also, Sean Connery was, I think, one of the most accurate attitudes for Bond because he was a bastard. He was so charming and he was just ruthless. Like, he was like, he will kill you on the spot and completely womanize and not give a crap about them. And like, that was like perfect for that era. George Lazenby was in such a good movie. On Her Majesty's Secret Service is great. Diane Riggs, who winds up becoming Mrs. Bond in that, and that movie having like the most tragic ending of a James Bond movie. Because it's not them having sex and making fun wordplay. Um, and then Roger Moore is the quippiest of Bonds, Mr. Roger Moore. And like he has some of the most iconic villains. Like Christopher Lee as Scaramanga, the man with the golden gun, is like the coolest Bond villain. Like he was cooler than Bond. He stole the movie from him. So like, but I'll always love Pierce Brosnan because I thought Pierce Brosnan was the perfect combination of what James Bond was. He got the quips. There was a dark edge to him, and he was classy, and it all worked. Like there's lines that he said that I'll never unhear, where it's just like he's having sex with a language teacher, and he's just like, I always thought I was a cunning linguist, and I'm like, as an adult, that hits so much harder.
I feel
And then,
like I feel like that was the campy Bond, Pierce
well,
Brosnan.
he was channeling the same energy that Roger Moore had because Roger Moore's the campiest of Bonds. He just like went quipping all around, but James Pierce Brosnan balanced that well. I think Timothy Dalton was ahead of his time because people weren't ready for a really dark James Bond in the late 80s. But then once Casino Royale rolled around, and to be honest, I think Daniel Craig is arguably the best. And he is given the best performances, like the acting that he does in these movies. James Bond movies didn't get actually taken seriously as legit films until Casino Royale and especially Skyfall. And the acting that Daniel Craig has done has been fantastic. But obviously, I spent a lot of time watching James Bond movies and love James Bond movies very much, which is hilarious because like I am not the kind of person that would idolize James Bond, and I don't. I appreciate their place in action movie history and spy movie history, and they're most of them are a bunch of fun, and obviously they're really influential. Like Christopher Nolan, the he lifted a scene from License to Kill, Timothy Dalton's second film for Dark Knight Rises. When Bane's crew grabs him from that plane in the opening sequence in Dark Knight Rises is a step-by-step remake of a stunt from License to Kill.
Oh wow, I never put that together at all. But I
Yep.
remember that. There's is it Littlefinger from Game of Thrones? There was a
Yeah.
familiar actor for me in that
Him
plane. Yeah.
randomly just being in that tiny role in the Dark Knight Rises. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that scene, but I hadn't put it together that it was from License to Kill.
Yeah, because they're kidnapping a drug lord from his plane and do that whole entire thing. And what's crazy is this was practical. Like there was no CGI that they were using back then. I think one of the craziest stunts in any James Bond is from Man with a Golden Gun, where they jump that car across that river and spiral it, except they ruin the scene by having a pin whistle. The I'm like, what are you doing? Because it's an amazing stunt. But and then obviously all the Bond themes are iconic. There's so many great ones. There's so many ones that sounded like random 70s pop songs that should never have been on a Bond movie. Um, but like some of the Bond themes have become more iconic than the movie. Like I can guarantee you that half of people don't realize Live and Let Die by Paul McCartney and Wings is actually from a Bond movie.
Yeah, it was written for that film, right?
Yeah. And you have Shirley Bassey like gold finger. Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah,
And
that's iconic to me. And
that is
not
a
to mention
big
that Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones were in the room uh with her, not with her,
mm,
but outside the room as she was recording those vocals at least.
it's wild. And like I love Tom Jones, Thunderball. That theme is fantastic. Duran Duran's View to a Kill theme song is like infinitely better than the movie View to a Kill. And then like I I think it doesn't get enough praise, but like Tina Turner, Bono and the Edge with the Goldeneye theme song is really cool. And that sequence is like the coolest with all like the fallen Soviet imagery and stuff like that. Because it was the first Bond movie after the fall of Soviet Union.
Oh, was I didn't even realize. I
Yep,
didn't even realize the political significance.
which was wild. Um, I don't think Garbage, whose song "The World Is Not Enough" gets enough credit. I think
Hmm.
that theme song is fantastic. Um, I think if Madonna's Die Another Day came out as a song, people would like it more than the fact that it turned out to be a Bond theme. And then, like, they just started racking up Oscars once Daniel Craig Bond rolled around. I think Chris Cornell deserves more credit for his Casino Royale theme song. I think that's really cool, and that sequence is cool. But, like, come on, we're going to talk about it. But, like, Skyfall, Adele just was like, this was written in stone, was like, this thing's going to win an Oscar.
Yeah.
But obviously have a lot of experience with James Bond here coming into this discussion. And Skyfall, I think I would argue is the best directed and best shot Bond movie. It's a really impressive film, and the fact that they got Sam Mendes to come on and do this film, the director of American Beauty, Road to Perdition, and then came on and did this and has since done like 1917. But there's just something so sleek and just like pitch perfect about how well directed Skyfall is.
Yeah, I remember I saw Skyfall in the theaters.
Mhm.
Um, and my only complaint about it, I was like, this isn't a Bond movie. Because I was so used to Bond movies being not well directed and
Mhm.
not well written and not really interested in investing too much in the character because this franchise is supposed to continue beyond you for so
Yeah.
long, you know? Um, I didn't really know what to make of Skyfall the first time I saw it because I was like, oh, this wasn't a Bond movie. Like a Bond movie is supposed to be a bonbon, for lack of a better word. Like it's supposed to be an entirely self-contained thing.
You had
You
that
don't need to know
blueprint.
what happened before or
Yeah.
after. Yeah.
And
And it goes down easy, you know?
well, and
Characters
see,
don't die, main characters don't die, you know, that kind of thing. Um, but it is a good movie. I mean, if you approach it from any angle you want to it, Skyfall's a great film.
and Casino Royale changed things because like it set up, it had a sequel, it had a direct sequel. Like Quantum of Solace was ruined by the writer's strike at the time. That ruined a lot of things, including Lost, which was still my favorite show. But that had a horrible, horrible, horrible season because of the same writer's strike. But like Quantum of Solace was a direct sequel. And then Skyfall acknowledged the fact that Bond's getting older and might not be able to do this anymore. And I always think it's so interesting how they pick and choose what's canon to continue through stuff. Because like Judi Dench started in Pierce Brosnan's and then, came over with the Daniel Craig. And this is like an M movie too, like on top of it and having all that. But like Sam Mendes is such a great director and this film is so well paced. This is a 2 hour and 23-minute movie and keeps going. Which also that's been a crazy thing that these Bond movies have bloated to like 2.5 hour movies when Bond used to be like nice, clean hour 50, hour 55, and we're in or out, always around that 2 hour mark. Um, and this film felt like it balanced the new age Bond and the classic Bond so nicely. And I really appreciate that about this. And especially as somebody, this actually was my first Bond movie in a theater. If I remember correctly, I saw this in college because this came out in 2012. And I went with some of my friends. And yeah, this is the first one I actually saw in a theater. And it was such a cool experience because, like, this is such a well shot film. You have the opening sequence in Istanbul, which that even opening shot of like the deep focus of slowly him coming into frame and seeing Bond coming up there. I'm just like, wait a minute. I'm not used to James Bond movies like looking artful. And you know why? Jim, do you know who is the cinematographer on this?
It wasn't Deacons, was it?
It is Roger Deakins, which
No way.
you could tell immediately. I'm just like, I've watched too many Coen Brothers movies to not realize Roger Deakins has come in here and cooking because it's so well shot. That whole sequence with him attacking the hit and the assassin up in that skyscraper and all the neon lights reflecting all the mirrors. I'm just like, this looks incredible. And that
That
whole
was a very cool sequence.
really cool sequence and the whole Istanbul sequence at the beginning was wild. The bike chase across all the roofs and everything, them jumping on the train, him doing the whole crane thing within the train, and then
And then he actually got shot,
got
which
shot.
never happens.
No, Bond is not the vulnerable protagonist type. It's just
No.
like no, he just keeps wiggling his way out of things and killing people. But no, like he gets shot, and my God, that moment is so great because it opens up that credit sequence. Because you have to have a great cold open in a James Bond movie to hook people, and then that credit sequence has to be great. And this is one of the best. Like just all of the motifs of like showing Bond shot and like the blood coming up and the imagery of actually Skyfall because when you actually find out what Skyfall is, and it's just this mansion out in Scotland, which also they gave Bond a backstory for reals this time and made canon that he's from Scotland because Sean Connery. And like the stag and everything, that imagery, like that whole sequence is awesome. And like the Adele theme song for this is like, if you told me to make the perfect Bond theme, that's like exactly what you would expect from a James Bond theme song, of course Adele would do it. Adele had been sitting around after killing it with that one album and then just rolled up, won an Oscar, disappeared again. Because,
Rolled up into the deep and rolled away again.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
which like the Skyfall theme is so classic Bond. It sounds like a classic Bond theme, and it has the emotion and like this swelling feeling of it all, and it just sets the tone that Adele's a modern vocalist who has a vintage feel, and that's exactly what this film is.
Yeah, you've got the full orchestra, you got
Mhm.
the brass, the punchy it's kind of like a callback to the early Bond stuff. You got
Yeah.
the very punchy brass section, and then
Mhm.
I don't really think of Adele as being a sexy singer, but she's got class though,
Yeah.
and and she can sing her ass off. So like, if they wanted to take risks, they could have done that. Um, I actually watched a video today that pointed out that the Craig Bond movies, there's a very distinct pattern musically in the chord production.
Interesting.
Um, One minor, flat sixth major to fourth major, um, which I would have to sit down and figure out at the piano for quite a while at this point because I've been away from it. But there are classic Bond elements that have been done in every, from the Chris Cornell theme that you mentioned to the Jack White theme to
Which
this one.
it's so interesting because that was the most bold, different, going outside
Well,
of the box
Jack
choice.
White and Rihanna,
It
right?
was it was Alicia Keys, right?
Oh, okay. Alicia Keys makes more sense. Yeah.
It was Alicia Keys and Jack White, and there's so many things about Quantum of Solace that just sucks or weird and doesn't make sense. and that theme song fits it perfectly because I'm just like, who thought of getting Jack White and Alicia Keys to do a Bond theme song?
Who
And
thought this would be a good idea?
and then here's the thing, they won an Oscar with this one and then just played it safe the next two because they wanted to win more. Like nothing against writings on the wall from Sam Smith, but like it just feels really safe. And then they got Billie Eilish to do like her very, very moody turn on the basic structure that like Skyfall set the tone for like the next three movies themes,
It
basically.
did. And I remember that Billie Eilish theme. It sounds like Billie Eilish, and then they tried to kind of steer it into Bond territory. The Adele one is great.
Yeah,
It's arguably number one for me.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you have Bond here, who Daniel Craig's looking a little older, look a little ragged. He did die, and then he's on this island playing with scorpions and getting drunk. um and he shows up again, and it's interesting because we see him vulnerable. We don't see Bond vulnerable. Like he can't make the shots properly, and you have that like test montage of them testing if he's going to be okay. Even that psych test with the word association, and when they say
That's one of my
Skyfall,
favorite scenes from the movie, the word association.
M bitch. Perfect. Love their dynamic. And then they say Skyfall, and he just walks out, and you're just like, what was Skyfall? And then
Right.
you realize that Bond is traumatized from his youth. And I'm like, of course, this man who turned out to be a hired killer who can't have a good, healthy relationship with a woman obviously has trauma. It's just the first time they acknowledged it. So,
He can't have a good, healthy relationship with anyone. His only
no,
friend is the American agent. What's his name?
Felix, which, God,
Felix.
when they spoiler, when they killed him in No Time to Die, that gutted me. I'm just like, how dare you? Well, and then they killed Bond too. So, but like,
Maybe. Maybe. That's a Christopher Nolan death right there. That's what that was.
they definitely killed him so that they could just reboot this. Which, and that, I was not a huge fan of them bringing canon into this and like making these all interconnected. The whole, they, Eon didn't have the rights to Spectre when they made Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, and Skyfall.
Hmm.
So the Solace Quantum, Quantum was supposed to be Spectre, but they couldn't use it. So then when they made
Oh, okay.
Spectre, they
Okay.
finally had the rights back, and then retroactively was like, Blofeld's like, I was the orchestrator of all of your pain, James. And then it's like Lashifra Green from Quantum of Solace and Silva were all working for me. And I'm just like, that's shit.
That feels a
Don't
little
do
bit
that
Star
to me.
Wars to me. Yeah, it's
I'm
no.
like, there's things about Spectre that I love, and there's things that I hate about that movie, and that was one of them. I'm just like, come on, are you serious? But like them building up this sequence of like Bond's old and run down and might not have it anymore, and he has to prove it throughout this film. And then you really get M fleshed out, where M's being treated like it's so funny because it comes full circle. Because I remember when Dame Judy Dench got cast as M, and comes into Goldeneye, calls Bond a dinosaur, um, because he's from this bygone era of the Soviet Union,
Hmm.
like Soviet era espionage and stuff like that. I love when I think it's Tomorrow Never Dies, is like one of the admirals is like, I don't think you have the balls for this job. And she's like, well, that means I don't have to think with them. And I'm just like, damn, got him. And now it's like M is the one that's no longer up on things. And because like it's interesting that this film starts bringing in like tech stuff because it makes that classic type of espionage and like even the new Q, Ben Wishoff, who I thought was a really interesting choice, is just like I could do more with a laptop in my bed before morning tea than you can do an entire year. And it's just like it's a whole new world.
Yeah.
And I love that moment where M's speaking in front of that committee and basically is like, there is still shadows, and you just don't want to play in them. But that's what you have me for. And it's one of those types of things she doesn't mind getting dirty. And Judi Dench is great in this. She's so good in this movie.
She really is. I mean, she was good. I feel like she was good in the campier Brosnan stuff
Yeah.
to sillier, campier, whatever you want to call it. Um, I mean, in this film, you need her to be good because, like I said before, like a Bond movie to me is kind of a self-contained experience. So,
Mm,
like, somebody should be able to walk into this movie, not know who M is, not know who Q is, not know who Bond is, and still get a good story out of the whole experience, right? But given that she has, spoiler alert, a very important scene later in this movie,
yeah.
it's important, it's really important that she is relatable at a certain
Yep.
point along the way, you know. I like their interactions together though too, Craig
Mhm.
and Dench. Like when he and this wasn't the first time, I think. Hasn't he broken into her apartment before? Was it in Casino Royale, maybe?
I
I
think
don't remember.
so.
I feel like he's
Yeah,
broken into her apartment before, and she's like, "Don't do this again." And he's like, "Okay, all right."
sure. I love the moment where they finally get in his old car and he flirts with using the ejector seat from Goldfinger. And she's like, go ahead, eject me. she she just has such a great attitude in this. And the villain is an M villain
Hmm.
because this is a villain that M created with her cold, heart at times heartless decisions that she needs to do for the greater good. And I love, I guess, jumping right into Silva. Fun fact, that was Javier Bardem's idea, the bleach blonde hair.
Hmm.
What a choice. What a choice for sure. And I think it makes it because like Javier Bardem is such an interesting looking man. And I feel like without facial hair, he looks a bit alien.
Hmm.
Like in a Benedict Cumberbatch kind of way, where they look like you could be an alien, and I wouldn't be surprised if you told me that. But like Javier Bardem looks like a normal guy in other movies, but like between this and No Country for Old Men, there's just something strange and off about
Well,
him.
it's funny you mentioned, maybe not so funny you mentioned No Country for Old Men because he's a villain
Yeah,
in with films, I guess. So he's got to be, or maybe he feels a need to be very different in this film. He's like
flamboyant.
possibly
And
bisexual, very
I
flamboyant.
love that scene. Like, well, first off, that whole sequence, his introduction, him slowly walking towards camera, a la um Lawrence of Arabia, Omar Sharif just slowly walking towards the camera out of the
Hmm.
desert. That's like it was such a Deakins shot. In that scene, I'm like, yeah, this is there was some thought that went into how they framed and blocked this scene, and him just talking about the rats and the coconut.
I think
And
about that scene all the time, all the time. Like
it's such an
it's against my will. It's in my head now. Yeah.
it's such an interesting story and a parallel for them. Exactly. It's like they are the rats that are trapped and
Hmm.
they're bred this way. And all they are just fighting and will like kill each other. And that's so interesting because like, is it a little Goldeneye-esque having like a former double O coming back and being the villain, which Alec Trevelyan, Sean Bean, perfect. Love Goldeneye. But like I feel like this is a little bit takes to a whole other level because like what was interesting about Alec Trevelyan was he didn't feel like a Bond villain. Like it wasn't like mustache twirly. Like it was a grounded, intense dynamic. Here, Silva is big
Mm.
and big personality. And that whole thing where he's trying to like really mess with Bond and flirt with him. And I'm like, Bond is so I would F anything that moves coded. So I wasn't surprised about that at all. And even like how Harvey Bardem's like, ooh. And like,
He's, he says, "What makes you think this would be my first time?" And I
yeah,
go,
damn.
"Oh, I believe that. Like, who knows what Bond has done in the past? I don't know."
I will say one of the things that the one main thing that rubs me the wrong way, and I have to remember Bond's a bad person, is him manipulating a former child, a sex trafficked child,
Mm,
in the woman who he seduces to get to Silva. That,
yes.
that's it's like, and then they where he like seduces a widow in the next one, at least Monica Bellucci is like age appropriate. It's just like they really were digging into these in it's so interesting because in these Craig films, some of the seductions he does are the most uncomfortable and
Mm,
so like completely devoid of compassion. Because
mm.
like there's the wife in Casino Royale that he seduces
Yeah.
and then he does it again in Spectre, and then this one feels extra dirty. But then also they explore him actually having real connections with Vesper Lynn, and then Leah Seydoux' character that I don't remember what her name is. Um but like it's so interesting how they deal with women in these Craig films because it shows that he has the capability of building a connection with a woman, but then he also is heartless enough spy to like really emotionally manipulate some of the women he meets along the way.
Yeah, there's a real tension there. And the mother figure, M,
Yeah.
uh, dial M for mother, if you're an Archer
Yeah.
fan. Nice.
I love Mallory. This is why we this is how we get ants.
This is how you get ants. Um, if that's his mother figure, it does make him a little more sympathetic, I hope, to a general audience. That she's equally manipulative of everyone in her life because of
100%.
the
Where he
job. It's
learned
the
it.
job. The job is number one, and everything in your life afterwards, it's secondary
Yeah.
to the job.
Well, and that's where in these the Craig films where it cracks is that Vesper Lynn did get through
Hmm.
and opened up that vulnerability. And that's such an interesting point because, yes, M does manipulate. Bond was an orphan taken in by the government and like molded in this way. And like, that's messed up. Like, and probably from a relatively young age, like made to be a weapon. And like Bond would understand healthy boundaries for relationships or anything like that. Um, but I
Right.
do love because like you know Moneypenny, fawning over Bond for years in all these James Bond films, and after a while you just kind of feel bad for her. It's just like, come on, like you got to find yourself. But like I loved Moneypenny in this. Naomi Harris, I think, is a really underappreciated actor. And I remember seeing her for the first time as I guess spoiler alert at this point, Calypso, in the Pirates movies. And here, like you get introduced to her in the field in the opening sequence, and I love their dynamic throughout the film. And they actually made Moneypenny a real character this time.
Right. Yeah. No, she was very likable and very capable too.
Yeah,
Like she totally could have made field agent if not for a few really tough calls that had to be made
yeah,
um, because of Bond, you know, doing the Bond thing, or just, you know, by nature of bad luck, I guess you could call it.
yeah.
Um, there's a scene at the end of the movie before she introduces herself by name, and she's like, "Ah, not everyone's cut out to be a field agent." Or I think actually he says that not everyone's cut
Yeah.
out to be a field agent. Um, but you're like, no, she'd be a great field agent. All of us know from watching what she's done, you know, earlier in the movie that she'd be a very good field agent.
Well, and I love their dynamic in was that Singapore? I'm trying to remember where the Komodo dragon thing happened. Um, like
Oh,
when
it was Macau.
yeah,
No, it was Hong Kong. Was it Macau? It was one of the two. It was like southern
they go to
China
a lot of places in this movie, and
where I
it's
was
so
living.
funny.
It's
Yeah,
really
interesting
very interesting scene. Yeah.
that them going back and forth over um the earpiece and stuff like that. Love that dynamic. And there's so many great supporting characters in this. One, Ray Fiennes as Mallory and to become the new M was one of the most inspired casting choices because he just sells like he has the British stance in the suit, like everything. And I'm just like I'm like, I remember watching this movie. I'm like, I hope they introduce him as M by the end of this movie. And when they did, I'm just like, and like do they underutilize because here's the thing, M was never meant to be a big piece. Like the first two M's were never like big characters, but like Judy Dench changed that, and I was really hoping that they would expand on that in Spectre and No Time to Die. Not a like I think they could have done more with M in that, but like Ray Fiennes is great in this film. So I remember when I found out that they offered the role of Kincaid at the Skyfall estate to Sean Connery. They wanted him to be that character to come back.
Of course.
He had been retired from acting for about oh no, 9 years, I
Okay.
think, because he did League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and retired.
Okay.
So he had been retired for years, and from what I heard, and you never know, was that he thought it would be confusing, like
Okay.
the original James Bond popping up and being this character. But like, not gonna lie, that would have been real freaking cool.
That would have been both of those things. I agree with you, and now that I think about it, I agree with him. Like, was this man Bond, and then he retired to this estate, and the whole estate is run by the state? Like, what? I
Yeah,
get that. I get that.
but Albert Finney was great.
He
Welcome to
was,
Scotland.
and and he kept calling Emma. That was really
Yep,
endearing. That was very very cute.
I love Albert Finney. Rest in peace, Albert Finney. Um, and he was so good in that small role and that he fit so perfectly. I want to give a shout out to Rory Keener, which is so funny because we were talking about Men, the Alex
Yeah.
Garland film before we were recording. Rory
Right.
Keener has consistently been like M's right hand man in all of these Bond movies and never gets any appreciation. And I just want to throw some appreciation that like he's been this like stalwart piece of Bond for years because he's a really talented actor and can do a lot more than these movies give him credit for. But like he just shows up and he delivers a good presence. And like he gets some moments where he gets to walk Bond around the new MI6 and stuff like that in this one. And I think he gets a little bit more to do in Spectre, if I remember correctly. That movie's like 2 hours and 40 minutes, and so much stuff is in that movie. But like this like I really appreciate him as an actor because like I remember seeing him in Penny Dreadful because he was Frankenstein's creation
Oh,
in
nice.
that,
Okay.
and he's so good. because like he has a lot of talent. And fun fact, his dad was an actor
Hmm.
who tragically died on set. He was in the Three Musketeers movies from the 70s into the 80s and died in a horse stunt.
Wow.
And if I'm not mistaken, his dad's also Veruca Salt's dad in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So like that's his dad, who was a British character actor. So like I just love the cast of this movie and like the introductions of like I love Ben Whishaw. He like Paddington himself is Q Branch. And he just feels like the right like new age Q. Uh Desmond Llewellyn forever, forever Q. Love
Yeah.
him so much. But like I really like the supporting cast. I'm trying to think of things that we didn't talk about. I loved the Skyfall climax to this is such a cool diversion from what you expect from a Bond movie. This
Yeah,
whole like
it's like
Home
it's
Alone
Home
look.
Alone, very much so, yeah. But it also it brought it home, and then there was I don't know if you call it a climax or a denouement, like a falling action. Because from Skyfall, we have the scene with M and Bond and Silva.
Yep.
And then we have another scene at M's funeral, I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
It's the little
So
bulldog.
yeah, depending on where you think, I guess Skyfall is the climax. So it takes us down by, steps. M passing away is that's a big thing for this
Big
franchise.
emotional moment
Yeah,
for
yeah, it
a
is.
franchise that doesn't like deliver emotional moments. Like what are
Right.
we used to at the end of a Bond movie? A double entendre. I thought Christmas only came once a year. Um but like this is such a satisfying finale to this film and also it's incredibly well shot when they're out on that moor, like the flames in the background, like everything. I'm just like, damn, Deacons going hard here. And that whole entire sequence, and yes, the final moments between M, Silva, and Bond felt so like thematically and narratively satisfying. It all coming full circle in that way. And like Silva wanting to go out killing M with him, and then Bond being the one that just like. And here's the thing: Bond's not a great guy. He doesn't care about stabbing a man on the back. So like, and that was fitting end to Silva. One other thing I do want to bring up is every villain in 2012 wanted to be caught on purpose.
Right. Everybody
It's
wanted
this,
to have their Christopher Nolan moment. So to
it's the
me, that's
same
forever the
thing.
Christopher Nolan moment. But I don't know who did it first.
Well, it's the same exact thing that the Avengers did,
Yeah, with
where
Loki, right?
Loki
Yeah.
is like, wait a minute, and they both came out in 2012. So like
I feel
that was
like there were some loose tongues at parties, somewhere in 2011.
and like whose plan makes more sense? I think actually Loki's actually makes more sense because at least he was using like the Mind Stone to like manipulate all of them. There's a lot of leaps of logic that you have to go through for Silva's plan to make sense.
Yes. No, that's very true. But you also, in defense of Silva, he's kind of nuts. So
Yeah. And
maybe he
also
just
it's
got
a
really
Bond
lucky.
movie.
And also it's a Bond
It's a
movie.
Bond movie. Like this is a franchise where a guy wanted to take over satellites to infect the world and repopulate on a spaceship just because Star Wars was successful. They wanted to make a sci-fi movie. Um like they had a pimp and a drug kingpin from Harlem as the villain in a Bond movie because black exploitation films were popular. So
Wait,
like
which movie was that?
Live and Let Die.
Was that the Christopher Walken villain?
No, that's
Because
no,
he'd be a great pimp. I don't think I've ever seen him play a pimp.
no, even better, Jim. Christopher Walken was a Hitler clone in View to a Kill. So like wild. So like leaps of logic.
Great actors, great villain in that movie too. Just kind of wasted. I don't know who directed that film. I off the top of my head. It
I think
doesn't
it was
matter.
I think it was the same director that did almost all the 80s Roger Moore Bond films.
Okay.
But
They
like
found a tone and they wanted to stick to it. Yeah.
they certainly did. Um and there's some wild plans from Bond villains um in these movies, and Silva's for the most part was one of the most grounded and interesting and compelling, because like what happens when you burn an agent? Literally, when he takes out his denture and stuff like that and you see what he actually looks like, I'm like,
Yeah, I didn't understand the science of that. I don't think you're supposed to, but
well, I guess they
all the
explained like
characters
cyanide burned the insides of his head.
cyanide burns. Yeah. All the characters I thought were relatable and likable. Bond, Silva, M,
Yep.
all the important characters in the story, you had a reason to feel for them.
Mhm.
Um, in contrast to some other recent movies that I won't name, whose characters like none of which I liked. I think that's a major difference between a good story and one that kind of falls flat, you know.
Well, and like this isn't just some megalomaniac who has a crazy plan. Like he has a grudge, and
It's
honestly,
personal, yeah.
it's personal and it's kind of earned. It's like I would
Mm.
also be pissed at him.
Yeah,
Um,
imagine if we put James Bond into those shoes, would we root for James Bond? It's a tough call.
well, and they almost pulled the trigger on that in Die Another Day, which is so random because they let Bond rot in prison and be tortured and everything by the North Koreans
Oh yeah.
in Die Another Day, which that whole entire him being tortured to the Madonna song was also probably one of the strange choices for that movie. But like then that when it just veered into crazy territory with people receiving new faces and diamond satellites burning the ice caps and Bond surfing on a giant CGI wave. But like this actually had weight to it, and Silva had serious motives. And even like Mallory is just trying to do his job and clean up for all the reckless choices. Like Mallory's the wet blanket of being like, you all are really reckless.
Hmm.
And yes, you get results, but sometimes it really messes up. Because they did mess up and they were getting agents killed. Like
Yeah.
there's some real weight to what was going on in this film. And I thought it was also an interesting commentary on how technology is changing espionage and like the CIA and stuff like that and MI6. And Skyfall has a lot going for it. And then you still have all those classic Bond elements. When he got his car out, and I'm just like, nice.
I do like the scene where Q hands him a box and he opens
Yeah.
it up and it's just a handgun
And a
and a tiny
ring.
radio. Yeah. That was another good scene for me. I like that one. I like the Macau scene. I
Yep.
decided it was Macau. I think it's Macau. Um, yeah, that one with Q and there was another scene I mentioned earlier. I think I rounded up my favorite scenes in the movie, but it's a good film.
Yep.
Um, which at the time it might have been also my first Bond movie in the theaters. I didn't think of a Bond movie as being compatible with a good movie, I think, at that time. Although Casino Royale probably still is my favorite. And it probably has more plot holes than this one even does. But uh I don't
I
I don't know.
for me, my top three are GoldenEye, Casino Royale, and Skyfall. And then I would probably put like Goldfinger and From Russia with Love up there. Some of those like classic Connery ones too. And there's some other ones sprinkled throughout, like The Spy Who Loved Me and For Your Eyes Only. I feel like are at least a couple of shining lights in an overall just goofy mess of what Roger Moore's era's James Bond was. And you know, No Time to Die, honestly, is pretty high up there as well. I thought that was a really well executed send off for Daniel Craig's Bond. Okay, yeah, they go to Shanghai, and yes, the casino was in Macau with the Komodo
Yes.
dragons and stuff like that.
Yes. Or
Shanghai was where he found Patrice and fought him in that like big reflective
very
building.
Christopher Nolan-esque scene in that
100%.
skyscraper, yeah. With the ads kind of I guess there was kind of a rotating um
Yeah, like neon
ad.
signs and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yes. Weird.
So where are we at then with James Bond at this point? So Denis Villeneuve is directing the next James Bond movie,
That's fun.
but he does not have final cut or anything like that. Amazon does
Oh,
because
oh no. Wait, why?
so what happened was after No Time to Die, the Broccoli's Barbara Broccoli and Eon wanted to take time to really figure things out, flesh things out. And Amazon, who owns MGM now,
Hmm.
because every time the MGM line comes up now, it's undercut by an Amazon Studios um thing. They're like, we need to make money. And basically they forced Barbara Broccoli out, paid her a shit ton of money, and now has full rights to James Bond.
Yeah, I don't love
So
that, but I do like Denis Villeneuve's work
yes.
by and large.
I I think him similar to Christopher Nolan, it's one of those like, oh my God, I get to make a James Bond movie
Right.
um kind of things. So like even if he doesn't get final cut on like the story and stuff like that, like it's still gonna be directed really, really well.
Yeah.
Um and they're figuring out who James Bond's gonna be. The most recent rumors I've heard are Josh O'Connor, who just was in the new Knives Out film, Wake Up Dead Man. He was in Challengers last year. And then
Scottish. Is Josh O'Connor Scottish?
I don't know
Mm,
100%. I because like I haven't heard him speak in his natural accent a whole lot.
right.
Says British, but that could still
Okay.
be Scotland.
Well, you got to be
No,
able
he's
to do
from
the
England.
posh. You got to be able to do the posh accent too. So,
He is from Southampton, England.
okay.
He's 35 years old. And also Callum Turner, I've heard popping up a lot, who's soon to be uh Dua Lipa's husband. But I know,
I know
like,
that name. What is he known for? Callum Turner. I know that
I
name.
know most recently he was okay, so he's Newt Scamander's brother Theseus in the Fantastic Beast movies, but he was just in Eternity with Elizabeth Olsen and Miles Teller, which if people haven't heard about that or seen it, would highly recommend. He was also in Masters of the Air,
Didn't see it.
that
Didn't see it.
that um Apple TV Plus series from the creators of Band of Brothers in the Pacific.
Mm.
So they're floating around. They want to go younger. Both of them are 35 because I think they want somebody who can do this for a while, which is fair. Uh,
Yeah, 35 isn't even all that young. I would have liked Idris Elba, but I think he's pushing 50 now.
he's
I
in
don't
his
know.
50, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I'm like, Idris Elba is one of the coolest British actors, like, period. And like, period. That would be cool. I've always wanted Tom Hardy. but like I think
Mhm.
he's aged out at this point because it's been so long.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to think of like younger British actors who I actually want to see. Um, I could see Richard Madden. I think he's probably pushing closer to 40.
Richard
But
Madden would be a very good choice. I like that one. Yeah.
what's interesting is like I wouldn't be opposed to them going more book accurate, where James Bond's not exactly like they like he's like more of a Humphrey Bogart type in the book, where he's not exactly like the most traditionally handsome. They just changed who James Bond was when they cast Sean Connery and
Right.
just completely
It's
shifted.
it's not going to be like the Henry Cavill type that's going to draw all the eyes in the room to
No.
this tall, handsome man in the corner. You're a spy. Like you have to
And
be
this
able to
is
blend in a little bit, right?
this is gonna sound like a weird cop out on why I wouldn't want Henry Cavill, but like he's too big.
True. Absolutely. I get
Like
it. Like
I
I won't
feel
even
like
argue with you on that one. Not at
it's
all.
like I don't want somebody who looks like they could break the people in half being James Bond. Like that's not the kind of character he is. But like I do like Henry Cavill a lot. But like I don't know. That wouldn't really work for me. But like I really like Jack O'Connell, who's recently been he was Ramek, the villain in Sinners, the
Oh,
main
okay.
vampire, and
Yeah.
he's also the main antagonist, the cult leader, the tracksuit mafia cult leader in 28 years later, who's going to get a much bigger role in Bone Temple that's coming out in January. Like I really like him, and I think he would be a much more like grittier kind of like not super like over like I'm not saying he's not a handsome man, but like he's not like dashing looking and he doesn't have that kind of vibe. And I kind of want to see that. I j- One thing I wish was that Timothy Dalton could have got a longer run as Bond. I
Mm.
love Timothy Dalton. And like I'm trying to think of anybody like I don't want a quippy Bond at this point to take this on. I would much rather see somebody a little darker continue it, but I don't know. They got Denis Villeneuve to make the film, so I don't think it's going to be like super fun and campy. Like
Right.
it just doesn't seem like his vibe. So
But then you're also stepping into Jason Bourne territory, like the hyper realistic.
it
Not that Matt Damon's not a handsome man, which he is, but like they I feel like that is
and
what the
Damon.
Bond franchise was. It was a hyper
Yeah.
realistic take on I mean, sorry, did I say Bond? Bourne, the
Born,
Bourne
yep.
franchise was a hyper realistic take on the Bond franchise
Yep.
to me.
Well, and it's one of those things where I would be okay. One thing that I think is interesting is they should have got Martin Campbell to direct the next James Bond movie, only because this man knows how to start a new Bond. Seeing as he only directed two films and it was GoldenEye and Casino Royale.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah.
I don't think Martin Campbell has made a great film in years. He still makes enjoyable films, but like I don't think he's made a great film in years. But like for some reason, he just really understands James Bond. But
Yeah.
no, I hope that they get Nolan to do Bond at some point in the future. Um, I think somebody who probably would love to do it, that if they were going more of like a quippy kind of Bond, is like a Guy Ritchie.
Okay.
Um, like obviously, if you're gonna get somebody super British, Guy Ritchie is Guy Ritchie is it. Um, oh, you know who would be interesting? That Charlie Hunnam. I think he's getting a little too far into his 40s. But like speaking of Guy Ritchie, I would never have said this if it weren't for seeing Charlie Hunnam in like The Gentleman and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think he would be an interesting choice as Bond.
I
Um,
really enjoyed The Gentleman, both the show and the limited run.
yes,
Both I thought were really, really enjoyable.
I never thought I would really love Theo James in anything until I watched the show. And I'm
Yeah.
like, huh, maybe people just didn't realize you had personality. If you are an actor out there and you're worried that people don't think you have personality, do a Guy Ritchie movie.
I've never heard Jax Teller, Charlie Hunnam speak in his normal British. I don't even know that he can do it anymore. I've never heard him do a proper British accent.
It's so funny because I've heard his British accent seep into his American accent and Pacific Rim so many times. He was not keeping that American accent well in that. But like I'm just imagining it's like, come on, Fletcher, with like him and Hugh Grant's banter and gentlemen is like, come play with me, Raymond. Um, I I would love to see Hugh Grant pop up in a Bond movie in some shape or form because I want Hugh Grant in everything. Like at this point, it's so funny because like I didn't love Hugh Grant when he was like British heartthrob rom-com star, but crotchety middle-aged and aging Hugh Grant is my jam. Whether it's he was great in The Gentleman, he is a
Heretic?
revelation in Paddington 2 as Phoenix Buchanan. And I like he's so much fun, like Dungeons and Dragons, even. He's
I
so
didn't
much
even see
fun in
that
that.
one. I didn't even see
And he's so grumpy doing all of these movies.
it.
But he's like, you know how many kids I have? And have because like he was an Oompa Loompa
Was he
in
really?
Wonka. And he was one of the best parts of the movie. And
Nice.
they even made him like he had to introduce an award at an award show, and he's just like, oh, what was it? Um, it was a Oompa Loompa. Oopity dee. It's time to bring out the nominees. And he looked like he wanted to like shoot himself after he said it. But
I
like
I don't know why I'm here.
but I think like I if they're not gonna bring Ray Fiennes back as M, I think Hugh Grant would be a great time to bring in as like an M role and
Definitely.
stuff like that.
Is there a chance that Ray Fiennes is not coming back?
My guess is that they're just gonna hard reset it.
Oh,
And
okay.
like, do they have to? No. Because when has Bond ever cared about continuity in anything? Because like, why did Judi Dench come back for Casino Royale? Nobody questioned it.
No.
Honestly, I like James Bond better when nobody questions continuity.
Right.
You just deal with it.
Well,
It's
we're not
just
talking about the last two films, are we? We're talking about Skyfall as if it's the definitive Craig Bond film, right?
yeah, which it is. I've like he the fact that he had both Casino Royale and Skyfall is legit. And I feel terrible that he got saddled with Quantum of Solace because that whole writer's strike thing was just a complete hot mess.
It was
And then
tough. There were very enjoyable bits of that movie, I thought. I
yeah,
really liked the girls in that movie. I
I
don't
love I can't remember what the Italian actor's name is that plays his friend, but like I love any of the scenes he's in with him in
Oh,
that. And I thought Olga Kurylenko was an inspired choice
he like talks him back out of retirement. What is his name? I remember
because I
I
remember
remember
seeing
I can see his face right now.
he was in Hannibal, um, the Hannibal Lecter film too.
Lecter, not the general with the elephants.
Correct. It is Giancarlo Giannini. I really liked him in he was Mathis,
Most
his
Italian
pal.
name ever. Mathis. Mathis
Yeah.
is yes. All right.
So like, and then there was a lot of things that I loved about Spectre. I thought Dave Batista being the henchman, Mr. Hinks, was an inspired choice because like he's a mountain of a man
He's
and
huge.
he's a huge man. And the casting of Christoph Waltz was genius. The
Yes,
execution of Blofeld was not. Like,
agreed. I fell
um,
asleep in that movie, to be honest with you. I fell asleep.
I don't blame you. But like that Day of the Dead cold open is legit.
It's
That is
legit, but it's also a completely different tone. There's one part where he falls off a roof and onto a
and lands on a
couch.
couch. Yep. Because
Like you're
Spectre
like,
when
where's the hero landing? Where's the tuck and roll? Like, what are you doing, James Bond?
Spectre felt much more like a Roger Moore Bond movie than any of the Craig movies. And I'm glad that they refocused that a little bit with No Time to Die. Like, sure, it still has its humor. Like, it brought back more of that serious tone. Um, Rami Malek was an inspired casting. I just don't think they gave that character a whole lot of depth, but like the visual of it was really interesting. And
Yeah.
then Leah Sado is really talented and interesting choice of course in Bond fashion that they have him marry a woman that's like probably 20 years younger. But in general, Skyfall is still great. I still love James Bond movies. And
Yeah,
obviously I could talk about James Bond movies all day.
I'd be interested to know if any people younger than we are, I guess,
Are still
um,
really into it.
are into those past two movies the way that we're into Casino Royale and Skyfall, or
That is
if
interesting.
or if the quality of the movies and the directing and the cinematography, et cetera, really speaks for itself, you know?
Well, it's interesting because it was Sam Mendes who directed Spectre too. I
Oh,
just
did
think
he?
he yeah.
I didn't even remember that
And
whole
then it
fact.
was I think it was Cary Fukunaga from like True Detective that did No Time to Die.
Okay.
I just think both of those films were a little bloated because like literally Spectre's almost 2 hours and 45 minutes. Like
And they still didn't manage to bring the villain in until like the last
or
20 minutes of the film.
or then when they reveal him to be Blofeld and they go back to the I did think that them going back to the old destroyed MI6 building was cool.
That was fun.
I
Yeah.
loved when they introduced that building in the Pierce Brosnan Bond and because it's such a cool looking building. I don't know why. It just looks really cool and it just reminds me of World Is Not Enough where they like he rides out of the shit of the boat out of the building and they have that whole entire boat chase through London. That one like there's specific things about that movie that I hate, like the Bond girl. Getting Denise Richards to play a nuclear scientist named Christmas was a choice, but I loved Electra King being the villain and that they actually made a woman a Bond villain, like the Bond villain.
Right.
And I thought she did really great. And I will happily have Valentin Tchaikovsky pop back up again in a Bond movie. Robbie Coltrane, when they introduced him, I always used to play as Valentine or Jaws in GoldenEye. um,
I was always terrible in GoldenEye. Just a full disclosure moment. I was the worst because I had a PlayStation and all my friends had N64. So whenever we sat down to play, it was either Mario Kart or GoldenEye, and I was awful. I was absolutely terrible.
one of my favorite things was to do some of the cheat codes and do all rocket launchers or all grenade launchers. Those are some wild PvP fights, just blowing everybody to bits.
That
Um,
might bring me back to the game.
that was a blast. But Jim, so is this. Thank you so
Yes, it
much for
was.
coming on and chatting Skyfall with me.
Always a pleasure, Shane. Thanks for having me.
And thank all of you for listening. Make sure to like, comment, and share on this episode. What is your favorite James Bond film? Obviously, you listen to us talk about that plenty. And make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. The SPM Crew Podcasting Network is ever expanding. We have so many different types of shows for all different types of interest, especially movies. If you really like movies, there's plenty of those. And if you want to join the crew as a guest on one of these shows, like the Wasteland Vintage Roadshow or a number of our other shows, or you have an idea for a podcast and want a place to let it grow and start things off, reach out to us on our website. And if you like our logo, my buddy Joe, our buddy Joe, from the movie club as well, did my logo for this. And I will say this every episode. This is my favorite logo for anything that I do. Joe took my vision and executed perfectly. Love the logo for this. So if you want to check out his work, he does have an Etsy store and does all kinds of fun stuff. So check it out. And most importantly, thank you as always for tuning in and supporting the Wasteland Vintage Roadshow here on the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network.